The Game Changers list for Commander received a huge update on April 22nd, and we have some thoughts about it. We're going to go over the entire list of changes, the things we liked about it, and the things we have some problems with.
I'm Mia, and I don't own a Bracket 1 deck.
I'm BZ. All of my decks now have one additional Game Changer whose name is Field of the Dead. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. Look, just because Field of the Dead is a game changer doesn't mean you shouldn't play it in every single deck you can. I'm sorry, those decks all get bumped up a bracket if they were bracket 2, but it's totally worth it. It's because if you buy multiple Field of the Deads, you get free shipping on orders $50 or more, and Card Kingdom even has other cards. Hi, Amber.
On Card Kingdom, if you want to save 15% on supplies, use the code MIABDAY. Why? Because my birthday is coming up still, and you can help me and you get a special gift by just using 15% MIABDAY.
But you think that they could also use BZB
No.
to save the same amount if they like me better?
No, your birthday is like in 300 plus days from now. Mine is in like 4. Use MIABDAY.
Or, of course, BZB Day.
No.
That would be also good. We're sponsored by Dragon Shield. You have anything to say about them?
Best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
NERDS
at checkout, you can save 5% of your real money tax dollars on your entire order, which includes custom sleeves with this cat on it. If you want to get Amber sleeves, you can. You just type in Nitpicking Nerds into the Dragon Shield search bar, and she will come up.
And Amber gets a kickback on every order of sleeves that you make. I'm sorry that the sleeves don't come with the cone. She's just wearing a cone.
Next time.
Next time, we'll make sure to have some coned sleeves. She keeps this up. We're also sponsored by Moxfield, but not yet. Settle down. We're going to bamboozle you later. And we have a Patreon if you want to support the channel. There's actually a brand new feature. I release today a $5 deck. And if you want to see the deck tech on that and the crazy budget stipulations, you can join for only $2 and get access to it. So there's a lot to get into today. As I said, April 22nd was when there was a huge Commander Brackets beta update. Gavin released an article and a video. If you want to go check those out, they are readily available. But those came with 5 unbans in Commander that would be Gifts Ungiven, Sway the Stars, Panoptic Mirror, Braid's Cabal Minion, and Coalition Victory. But we're not going to be talking about those as much today.
You can see the video that we made on it right here, though. All those cards were added to the Game Changer list. But what's a Game Changer? Online, it is defined as Game Changers dramatically warp Commander games, allowing players to run away with resources, shift games in ways that many players dislike, block people from play, efficiently search for their strongest cards, or have commanders that tend to take away from more casual games. But that is a lot of words. The way I like to sum that up is it can invalidate or speed up the game or catapult players to victory in ways that their deck normally couldn't, like an outlier of sorts.
Yeah, my take on the Game Changers, if I wanted to morph that into my own thing, is when someone plays them previously, before the brackets, and I've experienced this so much, they would play it and I would kind of go in my head, oh, we're playing that? And I feel like that sums it up for me perfectly. And that's going to be what we're focusing mostly on today, is the massive list change to the Game Changers list, what it means, and maybe some ways we think it could be done better in the future.
I really like the fact that this Commander Committee is listening. A lot of people had mentioned the biggest response was people could do with a lot more Game Changers, and that was also a response that we had. We had suggestions for it. We had a lot of takes on Game Changers, and we still have a lot of takes right now.
Yeah, I just have infinite respect for them for filtering through everyone and their sister going, why is XYZ not a Game Changer? What about this card? That's pretty good. It's like, I don't know if I could handle that all at once. But, and we had some, I think, we were pretty restrained with what we said could be a Game Changer. I know when we did our video, it was like, we had like 5 suggestions or whatever.
Yeah, and some of them did make it onto this new list. There are formerly 40 Game Changers, which is small for the amount of cards that are in Commander, because there are so many legal right now. But there are 60 who won right now, and whether you think they belong or not, that is over a 50% increase since the first one, and that's a big jump for everyone to stomach immediately.
Yeah, I think that was just way too big of a change all at once. I feel like Commander is a format that is very slow and steady. It kind of maintains the status quo. It doesn't try to shake up the format every 2 weeks. So I feel like they could have rolled this out a little bit slower, especially when we're still trying to figure out what feels right. And a 52.5% increase is just a lot. The quote they used was, "So today we're adding significantly more Game Changers. This way, the system as you learned it stays the same, but the list of Game Changers is clear and easy to reference." I do agree that the list is still easy to reference. I mean, it's just one image that you can either save to your phone or whatever, or go look it up, and it's all on the same page. But, I mean, objectively, the list gets less clear the more you add to it. And I think you had to add cards to it, but I feel like maybe going to 45, because there was always these 5 unbanned cards were always going to be added to the Game Changers list. So that would bring you to 45 already. Maybe 5 extras and say, hey, this is going to be evolving. We're working on it. I don't know if I love going to 60 right away, even if we were going to end up at 60 eventually.
Especially since they did remove a couple right off the bat and then added on like 15, 20 more. I think those are big jumps when people are still figuring out the Game Changer list to begin with.
Right.
They're stomaching all of these first 45, which is a big list to consider to begin with. And then it's like, okay, remove 2, add 20 something. That is a lot. It also feels a little bit weird knowing that all of these game changers are not equal. That's something we're going to touch upon a little bit more when we talk about the cards individually, but it is very easy to say that one card on the game changer list is much better than a different card on the game changer list.
Right, and the game changer definition is a little vague. There's a lot of different things that could make something a game changer without necessarily checking every box, but we'll get into that. I think remembering this new list will just take time. It's not the end of the world. I'm not saying the game changers and the brackets totally fail. It's just like, oh man, that's a pretty big shock. It's a pretty big change. We'll have to figure it out. We're going to delve into the game changers list to figure out how we would improve it. I think there are a few things that can be done. Beezy here from the future, going to be popping in a few times this video, this time to offer a quick disclaimer that we fully support these changes and are excited to try them out and play with them. I don't want anybody firing off a mutiny against the bracket system just because there was a change. We fully support them. We're excited. Ahead is just our reaction to them and what we would do going forward. First, we're going to go over these changes because there's a lot of them. First couple changes are removals, things that were taken off the original Game Changers list, and we'll get into those. First one is Trouble in Pairs, 2 white for an enchantment. If an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. I always forget that's even on the card, because whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card, or casts their second spell, you draw a card. That's the meat and potatoes of it.
This is such a good card. I thought this was pretty tricky to place overall. I think this should be on the list. I think that it's not the best card in the format. I don't even think it cracks the top 20. But I think, does it warp the game around it? Quite like Rhystic Study, I would say the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's a really strong card. I could see taking it off, but I think that with the list we ended up with, I would have it on, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I had to maybe make a new list of like super game changers, it wouldn't be on there. But I don't know. We'll get into like the whole list as it stands now, but it's like 75% I think we came to like that maybe we just leave it on, but it is off the Game Changers list right now.
Yeah, it's no Gaia's Cradle. Definitely, it's no like Mana Crypt terms of fast mana, but it does give passive advantage that just sits there while you do nothing, kind of like Rhystic Study or Smothering Tithe, 2 cards where the entire community can easily agree that they do belong on the Game Changer list.
Yeah, this one is one of the only ones that we'll talk about today that we're genuinely unsure of. I think the rest of them, we have pretty clear stances and it makes sense. Our opinion makes sense to us, but that one is like, I am not going to fault anyone for putting it or removing it. Next up, great remove from the Game Changers list, one that we suggested in our video. It's Trinisphere, 3-mana artifact. As long as this artifact is untapped, each spell that would cost less than 3 to cast costs 3 mana to cast. And something really important about all of these Game Changers and the context with which you're evaluating them is Game Changer means it's excluded from bracket 1 and bracket 2. You're going to see it a little bit in bracket 3, and it's totally fair game in bracket 4. When we talk about Trinisphere, it's not a fun card. It's never going to be that interesting for everybody. But the card itself, almost by definition of what it does, excludes itself from being good in brackets 1 and 2. Because if you just have a bunch of 4-drops in your deck, this card is not that big of an inconvenience.
Yeah, if you've seen any average precon, except for maybe 1 or 2 here and there, the average CMC of most of those cards is 3, 4, maybe sometimes even 4.5. Making all of your cards 3 excludes maybe a couple cards in there, maybe a couple pieces of chief removal like Resculpt, etc. But I think that it's okay in those brackets because if you're having a janky deck where all of the arts matter, you're not trying to build for efficiency within that to begin with.
Yeah, Trinisphere, I think, is the most unfun when it makes your Chrome Mox and your Force of Will cost 3 instead of 0. And when it makes Talisman of Curiosity cost 3 instead of 2, it's really not the end of the world. So I think this was a great card to remove. Ultimately, I didn't think it really belonged on there. It's just a different caliber of card. Now, that was it. That was the only removals. We had a bunch of ads that we have to get through. We're going to give some of our thoughts as we go, but if you want to stick around to the very end of the video, we have a much more organized, bullet point list of the things we would change. But we're going to start with Teferi's Protection. You know it. You love it, maybe. It's 2 and a white for an instant until your next turn. Your life total can't change, and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out, and then you exile the spell.
I think that this, dare I say it, is the worst one to be putting on this list. I think that this is essentially a 3-mana fog that protects a little bit more. And that's fine, that's a cool card, but to say it's a game changer seems very, very, just wrong in my opinion. I feel like a game changer warps the game around it. This seems kind of the equivalent of like a less expensive ink shield. It's closer to like a gotcha, or like it's a one more turn and I live type scenario. It doesn't get you out of like combos for the most part. This doesn't stop that or anything. It's interaction, but it's more protection than anything else. And I think that if I had to take some of the game changers off, this is one of the ones I would snipe immediately.
Yeah, I think this was a pretty weird addition. I try to think about what impact this has on the game, and when you cast a Fairy's Protection, there's a couple different things it does. There's really only two. The first thing, and I also think that it never does both at the same time. So the first thing it does is, response to a board wipe, either my own or somebody else's, blow out, I save my whole team, we're good to go, now I'm in a really advantageous spot. The other thing is fog. This, like half the time, maybe 25% of the time, this is a glorified fog. You're attacking me for 50, cool. Doesn't matter that my stuff's phasing out, but I'm phased out, and I gain protection from that stuff. And then I guess the next turn, if somebody wanted to play a board wipe, you're insulated against that. But mostly those are the two modes. And I'm trying to think in a bracket 1 and 2 game, like, Clever Concealment or Eerie Interlude. Yeah, that can have a big effect on the game, but we can't put those cards on this list. And Fog? I mean, we obviously can't put Fog on a Game Changers list, even though most of the time when you cast Fog, it's a huge upset. I don't think Fog is great. So I'm a little confused as to why Fairy's Protection's on here. It's a very ubiquitous card, but I really don't think it moves the needle on like making a fun game into an unfun game.
I feel like this was put on the list due to emotion rather than actual card strength. I feel like you can eke out 1 or 2 more turns, and at that point, it's the equivalent of like, oh, maybe someone wiped, Armageddon, but I had all my stuff. Well, you're gonna win from that like spot to begin with. But it's the same thing. If you wipe everyone's board and your board stays intact, you're probably gonna win in that spot. I think that you either win the game because you have a board and no one else has resources, which makes sense, or you are able to eke out 1 more turn, you're at 10 life instead of dead, and you can try and look at the top couple cards and see whether you win or not. I don't think there are a ton of times where this is getting super abused, especially because it exiles itself. It's not like you can loop this back and forth.
Yeah, this is, to me, not the end-all be-all. It's not an auto-include in white. I think it's just a pretty good card. I do think it's probably on the short list for most overrated cards, even though it's not bad.
It's a good card.
It's a good card, but I do think it's a little overrated. Next up is a card that we were advocating for being on here because I think it's gotta be one of the most miserable cards in the format. It's Humility, 2 white enchantment. All creatures lose all abilities and have base power and toughness 1/1. Everything is now equally useless, including commanders. I think this card does go against the spirit of the format. And honestly, it's one of the best adds. I think this card is just, what a nightmare to have to resolve or play around. And it's absolutely one of those cards that if it is played and we didn't have a proper rule 0, I'd go, oh, we're playing that?
This is 100% a game changer. This spits in the face of Commander, just like Drannith Magistrate. This was not made for Commander, just like Drannith, but it completely changes the game around it. There are so many decks that rely on creatures, whether that be the Commander itself, and it's like either, the centerpiece of the deck, or it's like an ETB deck, like a Yarok deck, where even though the Commander itself doesn't matter, the creatures have most of the effects, or elf decks where half of your deck is going to be creatures to begin with, and then this just goes, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter.
Also slows games down to a halt.
So I'm so happy to see this on here. I do admit that it probably rule 0'd itself out of a lot of decks to begin with because it is just such an unfun card to play with, but I'm happy to see it in official capacity being not in brackets 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, if I could only put 10 game changers on this list, this would absolutely be. I'd have this way above Ristic Study in terms of like how much the game is warped / potentially ruined for people looking for the more typical Commander experience. Next up, Narset, Part of Veils. What does that one do?
Is 1 blue for a Planeswalker with 5 loyalty. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. If you -2, you look at the top 4, you may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them. Put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The -2 doesn't really matter at this point. It's just the part that says each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. In the meanest of scenarios, you usually play this with Windfall, where you get a fresh 7, everyone else just gets 1, makes them discard their hand. Very unfun, and that is a very Commander thing to do. I feel like it is one of the most hallmark, that is not nice plays. However, this is also a planeswalker, so it has the ability to be damaged. It's not super sticky like an enchantment, and it just can be damaged whether you have like a lightning bolt or combat damage overall. And it doesn't stop people from just drawing their card per turn. I think that in brackets 1 and 2, there aren't a ton of card draw to begin with, and so I don't think it's really affected too much there. And in brackets 3, 4, and 5, I don't think it's that crazy to be seen.
This is definitely a symptom of, they sort of did a blanket addressing of the extra card draw punishers, and they sort of made a statement by putting all the best ones on this list. I don't hate it on the Game Changers list. I don't know if I would have thought of it as an addition. Maybe I disagree with you a little, because I think there is a lot of like card draw that just becomes uncastable with it. It's really awkward with like the monarchy and stuff. I don't think Narset is the most brutal addition. Well, I don't know if I would take it off, but it's definitely a lame card.
Yeah, it might not be a fun card. However, it's good in certain decks, but you're not just slapping this into every single deck that can run it. So, unlike things like Rhystic Study or Smothering Tithe.
Yeah, it feels more like a stance against Narset Windfall than maybe just Narset.
But that's enough about Narset. On to the next one. It's going to be Intuition. 2 and a blue for an instant. Search your library for 3 cards and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 1. Put that card into your hand, rest in the graveyard, then shuffle. I understand this. I mean, we're going along the Gifts Ungiven line at this point. Blue Tutor finds multiple things, some in graveyard, some in hand. I don't think this is too crazy. I think that it's much crazier when you see like Demonic Tutor or Imperial Seal, some of the cheaper ones. But I do understand why tutors would be on there, and I'm not mad about it.
Yeah, it's tough because when you say or few tutors in a bracket 1 deck, they're trying to, I think, limit the best of the best. The cards that have no restriction or just like are instants and they cost 1 mana. But it's like, Fierce Empath is a tutor. That feels more bracket 1 than a Worldly Tutor. So it's like really weird because if you take all the tutors off of the Game Changers list, then few tutors means, I can play Demonic Tutor when it's so far above the rest. It's just so awkward. I think maybe in the future there's like a more refined way to specify what few tutors means in bracket 1 and 2. But for now, I think you just put all these busted tutors on here and you figure something out. Next up, Consecrated Sphinx, 4 blue for a 4/6 flyer. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. Yeah, this is probably one of the weaker Game Changers, but it does feel like, once this is out, especially if you can't answer it, we've all been there, you just go, are we dead? Like, you got 50 cards in your hand.
Yeah, this seems like a boogeyman of yesteryear. Not to say that it's a bad card. It's a very good card, but it's also very expensive. It's kind of hard to cheat out, especially in blue, and there are faster ways to win now. I think that this is one of the weaker ones, but I get it. It's passive advantage that is, and card advantage is one of the best things you can have in Magic, so I get it.
Well, we're also talking about bracket 1 and 2, maybe where there's less removal.
Yeah, I get it. This could be on there, and if I saw this in bracket 3, I wouldn't be mad, and a couple other ones. I feel like this is one of the weaker Game Changers, but I think that overall, I think it leads to a lot of feels bad, and it's passive advantage. I get why it's on here.
It's like a set it and forget it, but I would think that maybe stuff like this means that Trouble in Pairs would come back, because they feel very similar. Maybe Trouble in Pairs is just better than this. This is one of the cards, I'll tell you right now, I will not bat an eye if I see it in bracket 3 or 4, and I'm 100% going to forget that this thing is even a Game Changer. This is going to be one of the ones that's harder to remember. But if you want to remember, Moxfield's got you covered because they've got little tiny orbs in the top of every Game Changers list, and it lets you know, even if you're confused about what the new ones are, doesn't matter. Go to your 3 decks on Moxfield because you made a profile, right? And you followed us, and you went there. It's easy. You do it. Once you go to your decks, you can see, Necropotence is a Game Changer right now. Consecrated Sphinx is a Game Changer. Cool. Thanks, Moxfield.
How many Game Changers do you have? Do you have 0? Do you have 25? Do you have almost 100? I don't really know what your deck looks like, but Moxfield does, and it can tell you how many are on there and what bracket minimum that your deck falls into. Go check out Moxfield and subscribe to us.
And like I mentioned, Necropotence is now a Game Changer. Black for an enchantment. Skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile it from your graveyard, pay 1 life. Exile the top card of your library face down, put that card into your hand at the beginning of your next end step. Love it. This might have been a card that I don't know if we did on the channel, we like this should be a Game Changer, or if we just said it, in our own free time, but I love seeing Necropotence here. It's ridiculous. At bare minimum, it fills your hand every turn.
I almost 100% remember us saying that this should have been on there, and I'm happy to see it on here. It's so powerful. Mm-hmm. It's one of those cards where you're like, I'm not surprised where it's like, oh, we're playing that. If I saw that in a bracket 1 and 2 deck, I'd be like, oh, it's that kind of game? That is what I'm talking about when I have the definition from earlier in the video, where it's like, this is a power outlier, where it's like, hey, this is my mono black deck, and I'm drawing cards, and, you know, I'm getting card advantage, and I have Necropotence in here. Oh, we're playing that? This is your janky one, where all of your cards cost 3 and above?
Yeah.
Necropotence is where it starts?
I've definitely seen people try to say that because they're playing life gain synergies, that Necropotence is synergistic in their deck. It's like, you know, I'm gonna have to call BS on that. It's the same as back when Mana Crypt was legal. They would play some janky Kindred deck, and they're like, it's my fungus deck, but I need mana. It's like, not Mana Crypt. Come on, man. That type of thing is what the Game Changers list is going to eliminate, and I'm so happy. I feel like I've already had improved games because of stuff like that, because no more Necropotence in your life gain deck that's supposed to be bracket 1.
This has the aura of, oh, I have this fun deck, but I have Glacial Chasm in here.
Don't attack me.
Yeah, that is the same type of vein, and I really love the fact that this is on here. Next is Orcish Bowmasters, a card I don't want to sound like a broken record for, but it's 1 in a black for a 1/1 with Flash. When this creature enters and whenever an opponent draws a card, except for the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, this creature deals 1 damage to any target, then you amass Oryx 1. You're punishing a card draw again. I mean, I get where this committee's going, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but
this feels just like a good card.
yeah.
I don't know.
This is passive advantage, I guess, but 1 damage, and then it's also, it doesn't punish the card they're going to draw per turn. This is just a good 2-drop. This is a very spicy card, but if I see a mono black deck and they're like, okay, well, I have this in, I'm like, sure, I'm fine with that. It's definitely, I think, a higher power card, but I also think that if it was reprinted and it like went down to $1 or $2, we'd be seeing it a lot more, and it might lose some of that stigma of being a higher power card because this card is like $50.
Yeah, it's just, it hasn't been reprinted. You know, they could have done it maybe in like Tarkir Precons because they have orcs on Tarkir, but I don't know. It's just like, this card just feels annoying and really good. It feels like one of those Dothy Voidwalker levels where like, this has 8 lines of text and they're all really good. What an annoying card, but I just don't see this on the same level as anything else on this list by a mile. I mean, what's the worst? The worst you can do, I'm trying to think, is like the same with Narset. Narset Wheel means no one has any resources except you. Orcish Bowmaster's Wheel feels pretty similar to like Nekusar Wheel, where it's like you have 21 damage to throw around. That does take a lot of stuff off the board, and you could target one person directly. I don't really care about the 21-21 that you get. It just feels too similar to cards that I am not ever going to put on the Game Changers list. It's certainly annoying. It's great value. This card is a very good card. But I feel like that's where it caps out for me. Bowmasters doesn't reach the level of you can't play the game anymore. Rather, your actions are very taxed. If you have a Treasure Cruise in your hand, you can cast it anyway and take the downside. And you still get the cards, and you still get to figure out what to do from there. That's not true with the previously banned Hull Breacher. That's not true with Narset. And it's not true of our next card, Notion Thief. 2 blue-black for a 3/1 flash if they would draw an extra card. Instead, they skip it, and you draw a card instead. I hate this card. I think this one, unlike Orcish Bowmasters, means you cannot draw cards. It completely shuts off one of the core tenets of the game. I think the only reason this card isn't banned alongside Hull Breacher is because it's 2 colors and it just sees less play. So Game Changer slot for me, this was a perfect place to put it. Get it out of bracket 1 and 2 because I think it is definitely a we're doing that type of card.
It's an obnoxious card. I'm happy to see it on here, which might be surprising because of all the other ones I was not that fond of that are on here. However, I think that certain other ones like Narset are very telegraphed, where it's like they might have you draw the cards, you know, like a Wheel That Windfall, but like this is flashed in. It's
right.
A little bit different. You know, you are spending the mana and they go, whoopsie, now you can't. Versus a Narset, you're playing into that or they're spending the mana. And Orcish Bowmasters, where you can still draw the cards, you're just being taxed for it. And I think those are okay. But since this is not telegraphed and it actively stops card draw, I think that this is a great one to put on here.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep going back to Treasure Cruise. It's just like a random card draw spell that sees a lot of play. Treasure Cruise, okay, you don't cast it against Narset. That is a little frustrating. Bowmasters, you might still just cast it.
Yeah.
You get the 3 cards, maybe take their damage, or you lose a 3/3. And Notion Thief, you cast it, and then you lose the game because your spell gets countered and they draw 3. And now, even if their Notion Thief goes away, they are way up on the exchange. And the static effect of Narset is now still a thing, but it's even more backbreaking if you try to draw or something goes wrong. Next up, the only red edition, it's Deflecting Swat, 2 and a red instant. If you have a commander, you can cast it for free, and you can choose new targets for a spell or ability. Now, this to me is a very strong Magic card. Free interaction is good. I don't know what this is necessarily doing here. I'm trying to maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this borders on free counter magic, but as you will see later, we sort of have a problem with that already.
I feel like when you start putting things on like deflecting slot, the answer is, where does it stop with free interaction? Are we putting snuff out on? Are we putting pile on?
Surely not.
But at some point, it's like, where does the free interaction stop? Are we putting foil on? Because that's a free counter spell. I think that this is not a good addition, personally.
It feels like this is one of the cards I think that's going to muddy things, and I do think they are going to get less complaints, the Commander format panel. They're going to get less complaints this time around of, why don't you just add this? I can't believe you didn't add that. But they are going to get more, why is this a game changer? Look, that's never going to go away. If there's one thing the Magic community knows how to do,
it's complain.
It's complain. But I think Deflecting Swat is going to be one of the big instigators of that. I think I would get this off as fast as possible because I just think it sets a weird precedent. And it's starting, to me, this feels more like a one-off miss. But if they want to keep this on, it's going to confuse me as to what could qualify as a game changer, because I just don't think Deflecting Swat is on this level. And I think if someone plays Deflecting Swat when they're tapped out in a bracket 2 deck, I'm not going to be that upset. I'm definitely not going to go, oh, we're doing that, because there's just so many free spells you can cast that could be blowouts.
Yeah, are we worried about Sack Teshar to play Flare of Fortitude at this point? I'm certainly not.
Yeah.
But at the rate that this is going, I feel like that could be on in 4 or 5 updates, and I don't want to see Commander like that. I don't think that's a game changer. I think that's just good free interaction.
I think it's just maybe the best red card that's not a game changer. Yeah. Next up, Gamble, red sorcery, search for any card, put it in your hand, discard at random, then shuffle. This is just one of the best tutors. I'll just throw Worldly Tutor on here too. It's green for an instant. Search for a creature, put it on top. Like, these cards are some of the best tutors you can have. I think it's totally fair addition. I don't know if you have any notes, but
no, I think they already set a precedent with 1 mana tutors that's already really, really good, mostly unconditional or very unconditional, and I think it falls into that completely.
Yeah, because Enlightened Tutor and Vamp were already on here, so I think this just rounds that out.
Yeah, I think they're just like, well, why didn't you have this on? Are you excluding colors? Well, now it's on here. I think it's fine. But up next is a card that I don't really get why it's on here. It's Crop Rotation, green for an instant. Additional cost to cast it, you sack a land. Search your library for any land card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. When you play Crop Rotation, what are you usually going to find? I feel like the lands you're going to find are going to be game changers in of themselves, or if they're not game changers, they should be, instead of Crop Rotation. I feel like Crop Rotation is not the cause of the problem, it's the land that you're finding with it.
Yeah, this does feel a little bit closer to all of the, like this is obviously the best way to put a land on the battlefield, but I think with this update, they now have almost all of the problematic lands I can think of. We'll list a few that we think they forgot, but that are on the game changers list. Before, I think Crop Rotation for Field of the Dead was super annoying, but as I alluded to, Field of the Dead is now a game changer. So if you're spamming Field of the Dead like I have it in a deck, that's the game changer, right? I mean, it's kind of just a second copy of a bunch of game changers, and I don't know if that means it should be a game changer. It's tough. I don't really see Crop Rotation tutoring for, like, you never tutor for a land that isn't on that level. To me, it feels just shy, and it is one of those cards that, like you said, could be confusing.
Yeah, I feel like with game changers, my also definition would be like, can you cram this into an average deck and have it be a game changer? Sway of the Stars, definitely, you cram it to an average deck, it changes the game completely. Ristic Study, Smothering Tithe, cram into a random deck, yeah, you're getting a ton of advantage. Crop Rotation, you cram it to a random precon, you're not finding Nykthos, you're not finding Ancient Tomb, you're finding what? A tap land? You know, like,
it's actively bad.
Yeah. And so at that point, I think that Crop Rotation isn't the cause of the bad parts itself. It's the other things that you're putting in your deck. And so even though it is an efficient tutor, I think that all land tutors should not be on this list. Rather, it should be the lands themselves on this list. Cabal Coffers is much more scary, even if you draw off the top, than Crop Rotation tutoring for some random land in a precon.
Yeah, this is a little different from the regular tutor discussion, because you could say, well, why put Demonic Tutor on the Game Changers list? Just find the usual suspects that are tutored for. But the net that Demonic Tutor casts is so wide, and just casting a Demonic Tutor means you can get out of most situations you find yourself in. That's not true with the land. Lands, mostly you're tutoring to be proactive in some way, and you're going to follow it up with something. So they're mostly good when you're ahead or a parity or whatever. You're not going to get out of a random situation by tutoring for a land, except maybe Glacial Chasm, but that's the game changer. Yeah. Glacial Chasm, Field of the Dead, Mishra's Workshop, Sarah's Sanctum. Those are the Gaia's Cradle. Those are the cards I go, oh, we're doing that? When you crop rotate for them. If you crop rotate for a Triumph, I'm going to go, hey man, I have some advice for you after the game.
Yeah, I feel like the only lands you can reactively get maybe with this is maybe like a Talon Gates or something like that. And we're not putting Talon Gates on the
I
Game
just think that's
Changers
cool.
list.
That's
I
like
think I think
cool.
it's good that you have protection and removal and all this stuff in the land slot. And if you're tutoring for that, then good on you. Not great in the average deck.
All right, next up, I think I should read this because I know you hate it. Seedborn Muse, 3 green for a 2/4. Untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap step. Certainly a card that requires something else. When you have that something else, it can be frustrating. It's annoying. You pair this with even just like okay activated abilities like a Thrasios or like a, I don't know, Duskwatch Recruiter. Sure, whatever. Something like that where you can activate, pump mana into them every turn and essentially draw cards. Or if you give your spells flash for some reason, Emergent Zone or Leyline, dang, that's kind of annoying. It's like a Prophet of Crucifix, and that card is super banned, and it's never coming off the ban list because it basically gives you 4 turns in a cycle. I don't know if half of that, the better half of Prophet of Crucifix, is game changer worthy. I don't know about this one. This one just feels like another good card. It feels like Bowmasters. Got to respect it, but does it make me go, oh, I thought we were going to have a fun game?
I feel like with Seedborn Muse, again, it is not good in the average deck. I feel like Bowmasters in Rhystic Study are good in the average deck. They require nothing except for your opponents playing the game and give you incremental advantage. With Seedborn Muse, I think that this is one of the weakest ones. I think that you need to build your deck to be good around Seedborn Muse. I played it as a win con. I didn't Lathril. I could untap all my stuff, and at every single time, drain you for 10, gain 10. Oh, you're done your upkeep, next upkeep. Drain you for 10, gain 10, you're already dead. And at that point, it's like, Seedborn Muse is a good card, don't get me wrong. But I also think that if you're not playing a lot of instants, if you don't have a bunch of activated abilities, or you can't funnel that into something, it's not good. I mean, you could untap all of your lands to begin with, and that's great. But if you have one big sorcery in your hand and you have, a mana dork and maybe something you could pump mana into once, and it's, a very paltry ability, then it's like, okay, that's fine. Even like your deck, Svella, it revolves around untapping. It would be a very good card in there. But would I be like,
Oh, no,
Seedborn Muse is a game.
Svella every turn.
Seedborn Muse is a game changer. I'd be like, no, it's synergistic to your deck overall.
Yeah, feels like a really high synergy card and not like a backbreaking game over. I thought we were playing bracket 2 type deal. Next up, Natural Order, 2 green sorcery. Sack a green creature to cast it and search for a green creature. Put it on the battlefield. Then shuffle. One of the other most efficient tutors. I think this is a fine addition. I play a lot of Natural Order in CEH at least, and I think it's a card I actively do, even before this, I actively did just exclude playing because I felt like this is on another level.
It's a good card.
I wasn't going to play this in Jank or anything. Next up, Food Chain. Surprised to see this. 2 and a green enchantment. Exile a creature you control. Add X mana of any one color, where X is 1 plus the exiled creature's mana value. Spend this mana only to cast creature spells. Not 100% sure what Food Chain is doing on here. When I think Food Chain, I think it is very, very good with a handful of commanders. Certain things like 12 mana Galta, or I think there was maybe some other big mana things like Henzi it's pretty good in. Mostly what I think of is Squee, Mist, Hollow Griffin, and Eternal Scourge, which make infinite mana alongside Food Chain. I don't know if that counts as a 2-card combo under the bracket 1 and 2 rules because you do need some way to pay it off. But it's infinite mana. And I don't think of Food Chain anywhere else outside of that. I don't think this is a card anyone's going to play in bracket 1 or 2. I don't think anyone would even really assume this is on the menu.
Yeah.
But as something you could do with Mist Hollow Griffin. And of course bracket 3 and 4, then I just kind of expect that and I'm not really bothered by it. I don't think Food Chain makes sense. It's not quite on Trinisphere levels. I don't think anyone who's playing playing within good faith is going to put the Food Chain in their bracket 1 deck.
I don't think I've ever built a deck and I was like, man, I want to make this bracket 2 or, a lower power level before brackets were a thing. I think I should really exclude Food Chain. I don't even think it was a consideration to put Food Chain in my deck at that point. I associate Food Chain with those spicy combo decks. But if you're talking about the points where you're like, oh, well, it makes infinite mana, it's a 2-card combo, but you need places to, pay it off. At that point, why aren't we putting in like Intruder Alarm? Why aren't we putting in like Sanguine Bond, Exquisite Blood?
Yeah.
At that point, these are all cards that can warp the game around them and are pieces of combo that need a third piece to really help it go. But we're not going to put every single powerful half piece of a combo on here because that's very, very weird. And then how do you decide which half of the combo goes on here? And then the list gets very, very long.
Since this mostly enables infinite combos, which are prohibited under brackets 1 and 2, this, as stated by the Commander format panel, is specifically included as a restriction for bracket 3, which I think is just not worth having the clutter added to this list. I don't like Food Chain here. Next, Aura Shards, 1 white green for an enchantment, and this is a totally different side of the Game Changers coin. Whenever a creature you control enters, you can destroy an artifact or enchantment. This heavily taxes artifacts and enchantments in a way that can be unfun. Does it reach that game warping, game ruined level?
It is a very oppressive card, and I group it into like the Grave Pact type deal, where it's like, yeah, if your deck is built around this really is rough, and it doesn't take much to build around it. Just with this, you have a bunch of creatures, and then stuff starts getting nuked. Very oppressive, but if you're not putting Grave Pact on here, I don't think Aura Shards should be on here either.
I like the Grave Pact parallel that you're drawing, because that is a card that, like, if their deck is going off, you really can't play the game in the same way that you would have. It kind of feels bad, honestly, the Grave Pact and the Dictate of Erebos. But I don't think we can reach that level of like when they build around it. And in this case, if you're also playing a bunch of artifacts and enchantments, dang, it's kind of unfun. Aura Shards feels like it will always be on the outside to me looking in at, when you're comparing it to these other cards. And I think if you took Aura Shards off right now, I don't even think anyone would notice.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, are you putting on Collector Oof? Because at that point, it's like, okay, well, I can't play my artifact against you.
Yeah.
And the artifact deck against you, and I feel like Collector Oof is more oppressive than this, but then are you putting on Clarion Conqueror? Are you putting
Vala?
Yeah, there's so many corner cases where I think that this is just not the right card to be on there, personally.
Yeah, it is just a very strong card. It can lock certain things out of the game, but either not to the degree that other cards which aren't on the list are, which would then have to be added, and I would not advocate for that, or to a degree that's like, you want to put like a sub Game Changers list? Let's get another list.
But we don't need that.
No, let's go to the card that bumps up all my bracket 1 and 2 decks if it had it. I don't think so, but all my decks have another Game Changer because of Field of the Dead, enters tapped, adds colorless, and whenever a land enters, if you have 7 lands with different names, you make a 2/2. I joke about this card all the time. I think it's such a free roll to play, and it does give you incremental advantage over the game. I think it makes sense as a Game Changer. It's one of the weaker Game Changer lands, but as someone who's played it maybe more than anyone else on the face of the planet, even in monocolor decks, I might have 11 copies of this card across 11 decks. So I've played it a ton. Super annoying, ridiculously annoying. When you spam this, it's so easy to spam. And even in my decks where I'm just saying up front, guys, you okay with me spamming Field of the Dead this game? It still runs away with it. You still end up with 15 zombies, and you just win by doing nothing. You just go, well, I put a bunch of lands in play, and Field of the Dead does the rest. So I get this being a Game Changer. I'm not salty. I'm really not that salty about some of my decks having one more Game Changer.
Field of the Dead is a great card. Definitely one of the weaker ones, but it's a great card. And I feel like Commander has this problem. Commander has the problem where land destruction is bad. Understandable. We don't want to take mana or advantage or resources away from people. However, lands are untouchable at that point, are pretty untouchable. You either got to be destroying target permanent, which usually cost a little bit more than other types of removal spells, or these lands go untouched, untaxed, and you can get away with them, which leads us to the point where Field of Dead, great card. Would it be as good if it was on enchantment or something?
It is on enchantments, and it's not good at all.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, I feel like we are getting to the point where we either need to be putting more lands on the Game Changers list, or we need to be finding more ways to remove lands.
Hey, Mark Rosewater actually said they're experimenting with more like land destruction stuff.
They have to. I genuinely think they have to if they're going to keep printing lands that are this good.
I think it's cool. I mean, I don't think printing more land destruction fixes the issue because lands will still be tough to answer, and it still does require a very specific card, even if it is some card that is printed in 2 years that's great at destroying lands. But I like the design space they're exploring a little bit over the past couple of years since like Zendikar Rising of destroy a land, they go find a basic, or the new dragon puts it in play with a stun counter. Yeah, that stuff is cool. I'd love to see more of that. But anyway, let's go to Mishra's Workshop. it's just a land that makes 3 mana for artifacts. It's so clearly busted. I think it was just a card they missed the first run of the Game Changers list, and I think it should absolutely be on here. I don't really have anything else to say.
Great card. Happy to see it on here.
All right, so we did talk about our list of changes all at the end, and some of them are new that we haven't mentioned yet. Solutions for some of the problems, which I think, one being the Game Changers list feels a little long, and it feels a little lopsided with certain things. So this is at least what we would propose if you want a quick, snappy bullet points, what we would do to the Game Changers list right now. I think ultimately it's positive for the format. It's great, and they did a good job with this. Even though I think, oh man, that was a lot of changes at once, I still think this is a step in the right direction. But first solution, I think, we're going to go through these probably pretty quick. Remove Teferi's Protection. I do think it comes too close to cards that I would never consider putting on the Game Changers list, like a Fog or like a Clever Concealment.
Are we putting Spore Frog on here? No? Then I think we should also take off Teferi's Protection. Up next is we're going to remove Force of Will and Fierce Guardianship from the Game Changers list. But don't worry about the fact that free counterspells feel really bad. We're going to add free counterspells to the bracket requirements. They all feel equally bad, whether you're, Flare of Denialing or Force of Willing or Foiling. No matter the price point, they all feel pretty bad when you think they have nothing and they just counter your spell out of nowhere. So I would put it in the brackets 1 and 2 requirements so you can't have free counterspell or counter magic in there to begin with.
Yeah, I think that was one of the big problems that we were noticing. It's like, man, this feels like clutter. But I also understand that from like a psychological point of view, getting counterspelled for free when they're tapped out feels bad, and it feels like you're in a different category of game, and it definitely has that, oh, that was allowed. Like, I wish I would have known that was a possibility when this game started, that you're going to Force of Will me. But like, how do you draw the line between Force of Will and Fierce Guardianship, which are on the list, and Pact of Negation,
Force of
Negation, Flare of Denial? Like, as the person casting my big spell, my 8-drop, getting free counterspelled feels equally bad, no matter what any of the thing. Even if they foil me, I still feel kind of bad. So I think, like you said, taking the free counterspells, removing them from the Game Changers list so we don't have that confusion of like, why is Pact of Negation not on here? Put it into the requirements for bracket 1 and 2 and just sort of disqualify them from the get-go. Totally, I think that's a great move. And that'll help the Game Changers list feel less cluttered.
I think it just wraps it up into a neat, tidy box. And it's like, okay, this is not allowed in these brackets. And it's just so all-encompassing. You don't have to worry about them printing more. I mean, they just printed Flare of Denial as a new free counterspell a year ago.
Right. And I think to the person that would go, even foil? Like, yes, even foil. I'm sorry that this random common is not allowed, but like, it is the same caliber of thing. It does change the game. Honestly, while we were recording this, Mia changed my mind on the Narset. I think I am cool with removing it. I think it is in a different caliber than the other card draw taxing denial.
Yeah, get Deflecting Swat out of here too. I feel like if you want to get spicy with it, maybe there is a world where we say free interaction, but we can kind of get rid of some of the other ones where it's like Convoke or whatever. Maybe there's a world where we get rid of that, but I would not put Deflecting Swat on this list.
Yeah, I think the question becomes like, how do you feel about free interaction? Is that something you can somehow tax in the bracket 1 and 2 requirements? I don't know. Either way, I don't think Deflecting Swat can be on here. I think if you want to exclude this card, you've got to figure out some other way to do it. Removing Orcish Bowmasters, it doesn't feel at the level of stopping gameplay or denying resources that much. Remove Food Chain. Feels just like a 2-card combo. Like you said, remove Seaboard Muse.
Yeah, get it out of here. Remove Crop Rotation. The lands it gets are game changers, but it's not a game changer in of itself, and no other land tutors are on game changers or even considered within tutors, so I think it's an outlier.
Yeah, lastly, I think removing Aura Shards makes sense. It is too similar to cards like Grave Pact that you can't clutter the game changers list with, and I think it's just a little lame, but only sometimes. And then I think there are a few potential additions that could be added to this. I would like to see Cabal Coffers on here. This card, absolutely. When I think back to what our sort of colloquial definitions of game changers were, this card comes up so much.
Yeah.
I understand that your mono black deck is janky, but you are now throwing every tutor, Beseech the Queen, Expedition Map, whatever, and you're going to get Cabal Coffers every time. And genuinely, this card being in these mono black decks changes the whole landscape of the game. It's going to change how I mulligan. I'm going to need an answer to Cabal Coffers, but if it's on the game changers list, these 1 and 2 mono black decks, I think it's just, the gameplay is so different.
Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx is also one that we would put on. I just think overall it goes faster than Field of the Dead, and Field of the Dead's on here, and I think Field of the Dead's a good card, and it's a game changer. Nykthos is just better than that, in my opinion.
It's Cabal Coffers-esque. I think it's worse than Cabal Coffers. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Coffers, but I think Nykthos it's up there.
It's good, though.
It's one of the better lands. You do need a board state, though. And lastly, a card that wasn't on here until you mentioned it earlier, Worldfire. I think Worldfire just is a miss. I think they not like a miss. I think they just forgot it. And I think we should add Worldfire on because I don't know of a card in Magic the Gathering that changes everyone's objectives and options quicker and more directly than Worldfire.
I never want to end the festivities unless I'm playing against a Worldfire deck.
I just wanted to add a few cards that are sort of on the Nitpicking Nerds Game Changers watch list. Cards we think might be a problem and are considering, I don't know, recommending for the Game Changers list. That would be Sol Ring, which is awkward because it's currently impossible. I totally understand that. If the brackets got amended so that brackets 1 and 2 could allow one Game Changer, I think you could throw Sol Ring on the list. It's just, it is such an awkward spot because it's a really busted card, but it can't be a Game Changer because it would invalidate like every deck. So that's the first one. But Phyrexian Tower as a really, really, truly busted land. Itali, Primal Conqueror, as I think on the level of Turgid or Urza with just these ridiculous decks as the commander. There's also Mystic Remora, which is very similar to Rhystic Study. And lastly, Thieves Auction, which is just pure nonsense. Those are the cards we're considering, being on the watch out for now. I can't really say, even though we've recommended in the past that Craterhoof Behemoth and Tormented Hailfire should be on the list, it doesn't feel like that level of win con is something that is going to be put on the Game Changers list. So we can sort of rescind those entries for now. And here's a full list of our proposed changes so you can see everything on one single screen. Again, these are just our opinions on how we would handle the Game Changers list from this point. But we're excited to play with these changes and see Commander moving in an awesome direction, and we greatly appreciate the Commander format panel for putting in this tremendous amount of work.
But if you want to see more of our opinions on the Game Changers because of the 5 new unbans, we have a video right about here.